Okay, so I've only recently come across you. Just to let you know, I'm speaking with Thomas Sheridan, um, and as a result of Russell Brand's um, recent communication with Jeremy Paxman, and I listened to you, and I sort of put a note, I put your stuff up on my Facebook, and I put a note on it under sort of. That I wrote something like it's sort of scary and exciting
Yeah,
to have my to have my beliefs challenged again and my sloppy thinking. And when I first saw uh, that interview, and I thought, oh yeah, thank God, someone's saying something finally. And then when I thought about it, having listened to you, I thought, I thought of doing a great parody of it. It would be great dressing up as Russell Brand and then sort of parodying his Messiah. Uh,
yeah,
oh, he's going to save us all. Russell Brand's going to save us. You know. I guess what I wanted to ask you was, you speak a lot about they this and they want that and they're doing this and they're doing that. Who is this they? Do we know?
yeah. We do. It's basically big business. It really comes. You hear a lot of things about like who is it? You hear about the Illuminati and you hear all these kind of things. They're all psychopaths and all these kinds of other things. Ultimately, it comes down to a business process. Money makes the world go round. And all these groups, when I say they, ultimately the top of the pyramid, from what I can tell myself, having been a former Goldman Sachs employee, I was a graphic designer, so I wasn't like a money man. Money is the root of the whole thing, and the banking system. So it's the banking system primarily at the top, the major Wall Street and London firms. They, in turn, pour vast amounts of money into organizations such as the London School of Economics, the Fabian Society, and all these NGOs and all these American universities and things like the Council on Foreign Relations. And these become the think tanks that manipulate public policy in order towards what ultimately is what they want. And what they want is very similar to a kind of a socialism, but it's a socialism that's based on large corporations who have basically control all commerce, finance, and just about everything on this earth. So they would be Goldman Sachs, Walmart, Tesco's, you know, BP, all the mega corporations, General Electric. That's who they really are. The boardrooms of those companies, and from them they direct and they get their scientists. You see, you have to understand that the likes of the London School of Economics are as much a part of the science department of these big corporations than a university. And ultimately, is operating a scientific process with the ultimate aim of a globalized business structure that's very similar to socialism and how it functions. Ultimately, the money underwrites from the taxpayers and from the actual production of society in the society underwrites the survival of the corporations at the top. An example of that would be the banks that are too big to fail. For instance, here in Ireland, a couple of years ago, two of our biggest banks failed, and the taxpayers bailed them out. So that's ultimately that would be the socialist aspect of it. So they are the big globalist money people.
Right, right, okay. Um, okay. I mean, how I guess is it how do they coordinate with each other? Surely, we
Yeah.
we as in how do they coordinate with each other, and can we learn from that? It's like we as in me, you, and people who are on who realize that there's something seriously wrong with the system and the systems in which we live. We can't yet. We haven't found a way to coordinate, to get together, to manage. How do they do that?
It's 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 because they've had the money and the ability and the resource and the time to do it. Ultimately, how they do it is it's almost like through application of a feedback mechanism that runs between the educational bodies, the media, and the top of these major corporations. For instance, if you look at the CEOs of all the top corporations, it doesn't matter who you are, JP Morgan, the big ones, any of them, Nestle and so on, those CEOs, if you examine their resume or their CV, you will find that they are transients. They move between all the major corporations. Many of them will also hold high-ranking positions at certain points within major government positions. We see that in the United States with Monsanto and the Federal Drug and Food Administration. The same kind of idea. Now, this all begins in their universities, where they're educated in a kind of a business structure through all the big business colleges, Harvard School of Business, the London School of Economics, Oxford, the Sorbonne in Paris, and so on, where they get these educations that are cohesively indoctrinating them towards the agenda at the very top. So when they enter into business, they're already programmed and ready to go and know what they have to do. At the same time, as they progress up through the ranks to become CEOs of these various corporations and then move between them, they're also feeding back what they've learned and what they know from the very top back to the universities and back to these business degree courses to sort of continue the cycle. In between that, they use the media to indoctrinate the rest of us to believe that what we have at the moment is all there ever is. They deliberately blinker our vision and they tell us this is the world as it can only be. And this is how they have the power and we don't. It's very easy for people to say, oh, they're pure evil and stuff like that, or they're all psychopaths. Yes, there's an element of that to it as well. But the reality is they're very, very clever. They're very, very good at organizational structures. We are terrible. We do not have the ability and the business training and all the other kind of academic, underpinning skills that would allow us to actually rise to the level they are. They are playing on a different ball game than we are. We are shooting at them with bow and arrows. They have, tanks, rockets, and bombs. It's as simple as that. We're not in the same league as them in terms of our resources, our ability, and more importantly, they're very, 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 very clever.
Right. The question that I get asked, from what I do, and I ask myself I think almost every day is, what, if anything, can I do? And I'm recently had some ideas and developing those ideas, but I'm sure that's a question that's occurred to you, and that you did touch on it in the interview with Red Ice Radio. But I kind of know I know what I tell people when they ask me that, and I'll share that with you perhaps in a moment. But what would you say? What can be done about it?
Well, I can tell you what can't be done about it first. What can't be done is expecting a revolutionary or an evolutionary process that will collectively change everything. And that's what, occupying groups like that, where it's not going to happen, because every kind of structure in terms of a formal structure in a collective can be very, very easily co-opted and actually controlled by these people. In fact, that's exactly what happens. So it's not going to happen. We're not, the human race isn't suddenly going to rise up one day and that's the end of it. It never happens like that in history. It's not going to happen that way now. My solution personally is to actually decouple from the system as much as possible. If enough of us did that, I honestly believe that we could actually create a situation where they would probably alter their business models to not be the sort of psychopathic tyrants they currently are, both in the government levels and in the corporate levels. And that would literally mean not spending your money on them, not trying to engage them. And absolutely, Russell Brand was right, do not vote. Now, I believe the reason he said that was he said don't vote for the current parties, because I think they're actually planning a third party in the UK behind the scenes. They're looking for a British version of Ron Paul. Don't vote. It's pointless. All you do is you acquiesce and give your submission to the authority. The same thing with protesting. Now, the protesting that you've been doing for years, Danny, that's fine. That's raising people's consciousness on a one-to-one level in a very kind of a guerrilla kind of way, and that's great. That's a great system way of waking people up. But you're not going to wake them up towards a mass movement. What you'll wake them up is individually. And honestly, a lot of people are not ready to wake up. Some are sleeping, others will never wake up, and there's even people who shouldn't even be allowed to wake up because when they do wake up, they're far too dangerous. It's an individual, personal journey. You got to get out there and you got to say to yourself, I'm not going to engage with the system anymore. I'm going to wake people up as best I can in my own way. A good way of doing it is entertainment. I used to write political satire here in Ireland years ago, ripping the tits off the sectarian politics in Northern Ireland. And it worked very well for me because it allowed me to deal with the frustrations, and it got me a bit of attention back in the day. And I feel strongly that things like that are very important. That's why I've always liked the work you do. Very important to do this, but there's not, I can tell you, Danny, there's never going to be this moment of sort of epiphany where the human race wakes up and says, let's take them all out. It's never going to happen. Right. It'll be a drip feed thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, is something that is hard. It's hard to accept. It's hard for me, certainly, to accept. To be that I'm going to have to be really, really patient, because it's hard. You know, I remember I actually read one of my Facebook friends, and I have lots of them who I have no idea who they are, but so-called Facebook friends. There's a 19-year-old kid who said, I can't cope with this anymore. Why shouldn't I commit suicide? I can't stand knowing what I know. And I can relate to that. It's like, it's painful. I mean, today I went to see the opening, the premiere of John Pilger's latest film about Australia. It's called Utopia, and it's just, you just think, what? They're still, I mean, it's just the racism and prejudice and insanity and what the politicians are doing out there. It's jaw-dropping, and to think that I'm going to have to watch that, for the rest of my life and accept that that's where we're at is painful.
Yeah, it's painful, and I've gotten those kind of emails off people too. But it's only painful if you still hope for the grand solution, the great awakening, the big popular uprising. If that's what you're expecting and you know that's not going to come, yes, it's painful. But at the same time, Danny, if you can embrace in your own life that, okay, the revolution is internal, it begins with me. I am a one-person consciousness insurgent. I am a one-person guerrilla. I'm a one-person, activist. I'm a one-person dissident. Well, then you start to realize that in just as you yourself, as a sovereign being, as an individual, you have tremendous power. And if you can fight these bastards every day of your life like I try to do, there's tremendous satisfaction in this. You see, unfortunately, we're raised in such a way that we feel we have a great responsibility to others. And we do. But then we realize that you have to realize at some point that if you can only really affect yourself, and from that a limited circle. Like a great education for me was, I used to work for charity, give money to big charities and do all that kind of thing for years. And then I never saw anything happen. And then I decided to say, well, feck that. I'm not doing that shit anymore. I'm going to try and do things locally. So what I do now is I do things like the old lady who lives across the street. If she wants something from the shops, I'll get it for her. And if anyone I know, like even if I see homeless people on the street, I give them my money directly. I waste my time. I don't care what they spend the money on. And that, to me, has been far more liberating and empowering than waiting for some grandiose solution. If we all did that, that would be the ultimate evolutionary moment, because we'd all be doing it ourselves. So, yes, it's painful. I know exactly where you're coming from, coming to this realization that that grand event is not going to happen. But at the same time, too, the inherent destruction of that aspect of your ego only allows you to actually begin to build a